Chapter 7. Why You Will Live Forever. Thousands of years ago, Job asked, "If a man die, shall he live again?" God is life, and life cannot die. Life cannot die. Life has no beginning and no end. Every person walking the earth is God or life in manifestation. Your body is an instrument or vehicle through which the life principle is expressed. You will always have a body of some sort, no matter in what dimension of life you function. So-called death is not an end. It is only a beginning. You will arrive at your new destination actually when you pass on from this three-dimensional to a fourth-dimensional existence, and you will look upon it as a new birth. You will possess a new fourth-dimensional body which is rarefied and attenuated by our standards, enabling you to go through closed doors, to collapse time and space, and to be where you want to be through the medium of your thought. Milton said, "Death is the golden key that opens the palace of eternity." The journey of every man is from glory to glory, from octave to octave, and through the many mansions of our Father's house. When you pass to the next dimension of life, you will see and be seen. You will recognize loved ones. You will possess all your faculties as an individual. When you came into this world, you were met by loving hands who took care of you. You were fondled, coddled, and cosseted. And what is true on this plane is true on all planes. You will meet loved ones who will care for you, and who will initiate you into the activities of the next dimension of life. Life is progression. Your life is an endless unfoldment, ever onward, upward, and Godward. You can't go backward, for the urge of life is progression, expansion, and growth. God is infinite life. This life is your life now. Therefore, there is no end to your newness, freedom, and spiritual awareness. Never in all eternity could you exhaust the wonders and glories that are within you. In the 15th chapter of the first book of Corinthians, Paul says, "There are also celestial bodies, and bodies terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. And as we have borne the image of the earthly, we shall also have the image of the heavenly." You live forever. In the above-mentioned biblical quotation, Paul is saying that there really is no death and that all men and women are immortal. Every child born in your home is simply life taking on that form. This in scriptural language is God, life principle, coming down from heaven, in visible state, and appearing on earth, or being made manifest. When your present body ceases to function perfectly, you will put on a fourth-dimensional body, referred to frequently as an astral body, subtle body, celestial body, subjective body, etc. You can't take any earthly possessions with you, but you do take all that you have ever learned and believed about God, life, and the universe. In other words, you take the sum total of your beliefs, convictions, impressions, and awareness. Fourth-dimensional teachers attend lectures. Frequently, some psychics, clairvoyants, and similarly gifted people speak to me following lectures on Sunday mornings at the Wilshire Ebel Theater in Los Angeles. They describe men sitting on the platform while I am speaking. I have asked them to describe the men they purportedly saw, and in each instance they have accurately described the following teachers in the next dimension: Dr. Emmett Fox, author of Sermon on the Mount; Judge Thomas Troward, author of 6 books on mental science; and Dr. Harry Gaze, author of Emmett Fox, The Man in His Work. They have also accurately described my father, who passed on many years ago, as well as my sister and other relatives and teachers. In no instance had these sensitives ever met any of my relatives or the teachers referred to in this chapter. Neither have they read any of their works or seen photographs of them. I do not look upon their perception and experience as unusual, as there is no reason whatever why men and women who are spiritually developed can't attend spiritual gatherings whenever they wish and appear and reappear at will. I have not seen the men and women mentioned on the platform, but several people present who are highly sensitive and clairvoyant see these fourth-dimensional beings frequently on the platform Sunday mornings and sometimes at my classes on the I Ching, tarot symbolism, and the esoteric meaning of the Bible. Spiritually advanced individuals can appear and reappear at will. Judge Thomas Troward, author of the Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science, and many other books including his foremost book called The Creative Process in the Individual, spent the greater part of his life as a judge in the Punjab of India. I quote from The Creative Process in the Individual. Manifestation is the growth proceeding from the principle. That is to say, some form in which the principle becomes active. At the same time, we must recollect that though a form is necessary for manifestation, the form is not essential, for the same principle may manifest through various forms, just as electricity may work either through a lamp or a tramcar, without in any way changing its inherent nature. In this way, we are brought to the conclusion that the life principle must always provide itself with a body in which to function, though it does not follow that this body must always be of the same chemical constitution as the one we now possess. We might well imagine some distant planet, where the chemical combinations with which are familiar on Earth did not obtain. But if the essential life principle of any individual were transported thither, then by the law of creative process it would proceed to clothe itself with a material body drawn from the atmosphere and substance of that planet, and the personality thus produced would be quite at home there, for all his surroundings would be perfectly natural to him, however different the laws of nature might be there from what we know here. In such a conception as this, we find the importance of the two leading principles to which I have drawn attention. First, the power of the Spirit to create ex nihilo, and secondly, the individual's recognition of the basic principle of unity, giving permanence and solidity to the frame of nature. By the former, the self-recognizing life principle could produce any sort of body it chose, and by the latter it would be led to project one in harmony with the natural order of the particular planet, thus making all the facts of that order solid realities to the individual, and himself a solid and natural being to the other inhabitants of that world. But this would not do away with the individual's knowledge of how he got there. And so, supposing him to have realized his identity with the universal life principle sufficiently to consciously control the projection of his own body, he could, at will, disintegrate the body which accorded with the conditions of one planet, and constitute one which accorded just as harmoniously with those of another, and could thus function on any number of planets, as a perfectly natural being on each of them. He would in all respects resemble the other inhabitants with one all-important exception, that since he had attained to unity with his creative principle, he would not be tied by the laws of matter as they were. From the above paragraphs, you will glean that an individual who is highly advanced spiritually and who senses his oneness with the universal life principle can project himself to any country or even other planets at will, and the life principle which is all-wise and all-knowing, and which is the only cause in substance, will project a body in harmony with the density of atmospheric pressure of the particular planet. In other words, he will be able to appear and reappear at will. For example, if you melt ice, you have water. If you continue heating the water, you will have steam, which can be invisible. But steam, water, and ice are all one, vibrating at a different molecular wavelength. The functions and physical properties of each are different. Likewise, you are spirit, mind, and body. They are all one, but each has a separate function. There is nothing illogical about a spiritually developed man living, let us say, in New York City and contemplating himself as being in Johannesburg, finding himself in the latter city instantaneously. He is a mental and spiritual being and knows that mind and spirit are omnipresent, and that when he focuses on a certain location and decrees he is there, automatically he dematerializes his body, which is composed of atoms and molecules, which now appear invisible like the steam we mentioned. He then condenses down the higher molecular vibration to the three-dimensional body and appears walking on the streets of Johannesburg. This type of man would also be able to go to the next dimension at will, as well as to other planets, and to return when he wished to do so. A dying man talks to his father, mother, and son in the next dimension. I recently visited a man who was dying of cancer, which had metastasized over his body. He talked to me about several things, and we prayed together. He was perfectly rational in his mind and began to talk to his father and mother who had left this world many years ago. He said, "They are here and I am going with them." Then he said, "I see John. I didn't know John was there." Neither did his wife, who was present, know about John's presence. But 1 week later, she received a letter from India where John, their son, was stationed. John had passed on about the same time that his father made the remark to me at the bedside. Your departed loved ones are right where you are. Your so-called dead relatives are all about you, and you must cease believing that they are dead and gone. They are alive with the life of God and separated from us by frequency only. You do not see cosmic rays, gamma rays, beta rays, alpha rays, ultraviolet rays, or infrared rays. Your physical eyes are blind to the great invisible reality that lies around you. You would see a different world if you began to see through your inner eye of clairvoyance. And in similar manner, what a vastly different world you would see if you were as sensitive as the X-ray machine or infrared rays. You might say to the writer that there is no one in your room as you read this chapter, but turn the dial of your radio or television set and lo and behold you see or hear people talking, laughing, and dancing. You hear music, singing, and the voices of men and women perhaps thousands of miles away. All these programs fill the room where you are seated. Man is a broadcasting and receiving station himself. That is why he was able to invent a radio and a television apparatus, because all these powers and faculties are within him, submerged in most people but still quite active in others who walk the streets of your own city. Eradicate that hypnotic spell. The average man is under a sort of hypnotic spell of belief in death. But when he opens his spiritual eyes and lets the accumulated scales of centuries of false beliefs fall away, he will realize that he has an existence beyond time and space, as we know it, and he will see and feel the presence of those whom he now calls dead. I have been at the bedside of many men and women during their transition. They have shown no signs of fear. Instinctively and intuitively, they feel they are entering into a larger dimension of life. Thomas Edison was heard to say to his physician before he died, "It is very beautiful over there." All of us have a natural wistfulness regarding the state of our loved ones after they leave this plane of life. We must realize that with the dawn their happy faces smile, which we have loved long since and lost a while. What the poets have said about the next dimension of life. Tennyson said, Thou wilt not leave us in the dust. Thou maddest man, he knows not why. He thinks he was not made to die, and thou hast made him, thou art just. Wordsworth said, Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory, do we come from God, who is our home. Whittier said, And so beside the silent sea, I wait the muffled oar. No harm from him can come to me, on ocean or on shore. I know not where his islands lift their fronded palms in air. I only know I cannot drift beyond his loving care. Robert Browning said, All that is at all, last ever, past recall. Earth changes, but thy soul in God stands sure. What entered into thee, that was, is, and shall be. Time's what runs back or stops, potter and clay endure. All these men are saying the same thing, that is, that life cannot produce death, as that would be a contradiction of its own nature. Life is, was, and shall be. The departed father returns and corrects a wrong. An attorney friend of mine in Mexico told me that his sister had hypnotized their father prior to his transition and had given him a post-hypnotic suggestion that the largest share of his fortune would be given to her. The father thereupon, acting under the hypnotic suggestion, followed the order given his subconscious mind, of which his conscious mind was unaware. One evening, shortly after the demise of their father, the two were seated in the living room listening to a radio program, when their father appeared to them fully clothed and wearing the same house jacket which had become inextricably a part of his dress around the house. He was angry, and he told his daughter how she had hypnotized him and cheated her brother and directed her to make it right at once, to which demand she immediately assented. In the next dimension of life, the father knew that he had been taken advantage of, and he decided to visit the daughter and correct it. Undoubtedly, his intense desire to right the wrong and bring about his true decision regarding the will charged his subconscious with sufficient intensity to precipitate his personality into their living room. This was not a ghost or a strange hallucination or thought form, but the entire personality of their father, who possessed all his faculties and who was able to talk and instruct his daughter in righteousness and integrity. A wonderful, informative, and scientific book to read along similar lines as the above is The Phantasms of the Living by Edmund Gurney and Frederick Myers of Cambridge, published by the Society for Psychical Research, London. How to give the oil of joy for mourning. You must never grieve nor mourn for departed loved ones. Radiate the qualities of love, peace, and joy to the friend or relative who has passed over to a larger dimension of life. Lift the other up in your mind and heart and rejoice in his new birthday, knowing that divine love and divine life are where he is. Realize that the dear ones who have passed on are dwelling in a state of beauty, peace, and harmony. You make the loved ones happy by this attitude of mind. Instead of feeling that they are dead and gone and that they are where their graves are, feel that the wisdom, intelligence, and love of God are flowing through them in transcendent loveliness. Whenever you think of a departed relative or friend, silently bless him by affirming, God loves you and cares for you. This attitude of mind heals all grief and sorrow for you and yours. Entering into a higher vibration. There is no one buried any place, whether in the soil or far away at sea. The body is interred and undergoes dissolution, returning to its primordial elements. Modern, up-to-date scientific thinkers never visit graves, as there is nobody there. To identify with the body in a grave and to put flowers on the grave is to identify with the limitation and finality, which brings on disease and all kinds of loss to the person who indulges in this custom. In the modern funeral, there is no body in evidence, and the relatives meet for prayer and meditation, celebrating the loved one's new birthday in God as he moves onward, upward, and Godward. Points to remember. 1. God is life, and that is your life now. The life principle hath no beginning and no end. Therefore there is no end to your growth, expansion, and unfoldment. 1 billion or 1 trillion years from now, you will be alive somewhere expressing more and more of the wonders and glories within you. 2. You will meet loved ones and other advanced souls in the next dimension who will initiate you there and help you on your journey that knows no end. 3. Life is a constant progression. Life neither goes backward nor tarries with yesterday. Your journey is forward. It is newness and endless growth from glory to glory. 4. Occasionally, as I lecture on Sunday mornings to a very large audience, several sensitives who are clairvoyant see fourth-dimensional men and women on the platform where I lecture. Their descriptions of them fit exactly these persons as I have known them. These sensitives have never met any of these people in the flesh. People who have advanced knowledge of spiritual and mental laws can go where they want to go, as they are not bound by time or space. 5. Judge Thomas Troward, who wrote many outstanding books on mental laws, points out that as a man advances in his realization of his oneness with the all-originating spirit, he can visit other planets as well as any point on Earth. He can do this by focusing his attention on the spot he wishes to visit, by disintegrating his present body and causing the all-originating intelligence within him and coalesce its atoms wherever on this Earth or on other planets he projects himself. The all-originating intelligence would create a body consonant with the density and atmospheric pressure of whatever planet is selected. 6. Occasionally men and women who are about to depart from this plane see, hear, and talk to departed relatives who are at their bedside to comfort and aid them in their transition. 7. Your loved ones who have passed over are right where you are. If you were clairvoyant, you could see them and talk to them. They are separated from you by frequency only. If you see a fan oscillating at a very high speed, the blades and the fan itself become invisible. Slow it down, however, and you see the fan. It is the same idea regarding three-dimensional and four-dimensional living. 8. Many of the poets intuitively perceive that man is immortal and that trailing clouds of glory, we come from God, which is our home. In God we live, move, and have our being. God lives, moves, and has his being in us. We are living in eternity now, because God, the life principle, is the reality of each one of us. 9. It is possible for a departed father to reappear to you from the next dimension and give you a message of importance. His intense desire to correct some wrong charges his subconscious sufficiently, enabling him to do this. 10. Never mourn the so-called dead. Protracted grief is selfishness, as you would be thinking of my loss, my sorrow, my grief. Surround the loved one with peace and harmony and realize that God's love flows through him and the joy of the Lord is his strength. This attitude banishes all grief and desolation. Suppose you had gone on first. Realize you are sparing your loved ones all sense of loss, grief, and loneliness. Rejoice in your loved one's new birthday in God. You can't keep loved ones forever. They are loaned to you from God and all must pass on. This is a cosmic law and must be good or it would not be. Your children are not yours. They come from God through you, but not by you. The child who lived for 1 hour here or who was born dead still lives and is a grace note in the grand symphony of all creation. 11. There is no one buried in a grave or vault. Never visit a graveyard thinking there is someone there. This induces lack, loss, and limitation because you are identifying with finality. The body is not the person. Give the flowers of your heart to the loved one right where you are. Realize the truth of the 23rd Psalm. Goodness and mercy follow them all the days of their lives because they dwell in the house of God forever.